Can anyone sing?
Well, all I can say is, so far, I've never met anybody that couldn't who really wanted to. I've got a student who really came in tone deaf. I didn't know if his ear could learn. I love helping them open up and find themselves. And I found out that I was good at it.
Welcome the second beautiful lady to join us this evening, Miss Judy
Rodman. The top new female of the year is Judy Rodman.
Named most promising female vocalist this year by the Academy of Country Music. Would you welcome Judy Rodman?
I had #1 record and, Tonight Show, Queen of the World, and all that kind of stuff. Then the label disappeared. That was it for my artist career. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, what else can I do? Because all I've ever done was music.
How do you find your voice? Because I'm assuming your speaking voice is going to be different than your singing voice, or are they supposed to be more the same?
If you think about them as being the same, it's better. There's some vocal exercises that actually stress the voice. The #1 enemy for the voice is air.
Air itself.
Yeah, air. Just a little bit too much. But if you get that pressure off and your voice feels nothing, then you can do this other thing that I teach. It's like a little ninja trick secret that unlocks everything. And that is...
What led you to becoming a vocal coach in the first place?
Well, I'll have to say, to start with, it's not anything I ever dreamed about being. What happened is in our crazy business, happens, is that, doors shut, windows close, the business changes, and we see the brick wall. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, what else can I do? Because all I've ever done was music, since I was little. So I was working with a girl named Carol Chase. I'd worked with her tons of times in the studio, and she and I both were writing at Warner Chapel. And she got a gig with Leonard Skinner in the touring band.
Wow.
And she was having trouble with a high note that she had to hit every night. So she knew me, and I used to, lead a lot of groups and arrange vocals, and she knew what I knew that I didn't even know I knew. And so she asked me if I could help her do it. So I thought to myself, why do you think I know? But anyway, I did, and I was able to help her. And so when the walls started closing and the doors started closing for me in different areas, I thought, well, I'll just hang my shingle out as a vocal coach and see if anybody bites. I also hung my shingle out as an organic garden designer. And the one that got hit, with the ad that I put in the newspaper was the vocal coach ad. And then I started doing it because I had to do something. And I found that, #1, I enjoyed it because I love voices anyway, and I love helping them, open up and find themselves. And I found out that I was good at it. It was just something that I didn't know that I was good at, but I have all my life worked with voices, so I intrinsically can feel what your voice is doing. In fact, my larynx is moving to what you're doing. And so it just went from there. And I've been in this crazy business of ours for over 50 years now, and I've been teaching, teaching voice for over 20 now. So, but guess what? I'm still doing everything else as well.
So take me back to when you had that first session, when your friend calls you and she knew that you could help her, but as far as you were concerned, you said, I have no idea what I'm doing. What were those first steps? What did that look like if you didn't tactically know what you were going in there to do?
Only thing I knew was what worked for me at that point. The only thing I knew is what worked for me. And I have this innate sort of sense of where my power comes from. And it's not the diaphragm. It is the pelvic floor. It's the saddle. And I just knew it. And what she was doing was raising her chin and, trying to reach that note. And that was sabotaging it. I didn't know why. I know why now. But all I knew was what worked is to get tall and, rock your head down just a little bit and use your pelvic floor for power and not push, but just be big in here with the way your head is. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I was able to help her pull that note up instead of push it. And she never looked back. And I didn't see her for probably a decade, I guess. And of all things, I saw her at a mutual session friend of ours' art show, because he's doing art now and painting. And so she was there and she's started crying. And she said, Judy, I've gotten vocal cord paralysis. So it's going to be full circle. I'm going to start working with her again next week. So it's just such an honored place to be,
Wow.
to be able to work with voices like that.
And in cases like that, you said vocal cord paralysis. I mean, the
Partial.
name is right. It's kind of self-explanatory what it is, even though I've never heard of it. How that's something you can coach somebody through to get back to where she was?
I've done it twice. I've already done it twice, and I'm hoping that I can with her.
Wow.
Sometimes it's caused by fear. I mean, fear, when something starts to go wrong, that revs up all the wrong muscles and makes us want to go. And I've had vocal damage myself from an endotracheal tube and had to get my own voice back. That's another reason I knew how to help her, because I had to get my own voice back. So you just got to take that pressure off. And that's what I told her we're going to do. I'm going to teach her the exercises and the way that I've learned to pull myself open for power. In other words, to power myself open instead of power myself tight. And that gives you two things. Gives you way more resonance, and it totally protects your vocal health because it creates a very efficient airstream through your vocal cords.
So you said this was something that you had to work through yourself. I'm failing to remember exactly what you just said it was.
Well, and let me back up a little bit. The vocal cord paralysis can be caused by fear, can also be caused just by, abuse. But I've worked with the paralyzed vocal cord. Within 3 weeks, the first one that I worked with, it disappeared. It just disappeared because we took the pressure off and I gave her confidence that her voice was okay. And she'd been scoped, by a laryngologist who said that she had a partial paralysis of her cord, and it was gone in 3 weeks.
Wow.
I've also worked with a polyp that was inoperable. They said, you just got to get another job. You can't sing anymore. And this man decided this was not what he wanted to do. So he used my pulling technique, and 2 years later, after continuing to sing, he sent me a scope showing his vocal cord as it is now, which is completely smooth. Whereas before it had this ugly vein running through this awful polyp. So I've worked with that. I've worked even with spasmodic dysphonia, which is a neural disorder. And you can't cure that, but you can sort of raise the scaffolding, around so that it can set itself a little bit more securely. And then, all I know is that with muscle tension dysphonia and all kinds of other vocal damage and vocal strain, if you take the pressure off, and vocal scarring, vocal sulcus, I've worked with this guy that had a really bad scar right in through his cord. I mean, it was diagnosed there. He's back to gigging.
Wow.
And so I know the power of good technique to help a precious creative continue with their work.
Right.
It's just, I love my work. Yeah.
I mean, it would be hard to see why you wouldn't love it at this point. I mean, you said that their own doctors were saying you should give it up. If you were to put this in terms of, let's say, an athlete, they, tear an ACL, whatever the case is,
right? Where,
hey, your dream, the thing you've been working for your entire life that you love, you can no longer do it. For somebody to just come in and fix that's remarkable. It truly is. So I definitely see why you love it.
You can never promise. I can never promise that I can fix the thing,
Of course.
but almost always I can, and it doesn't require surgery. But I'm not a doctor. I always tell people that, and if I do suspect some damage or some kind of an issue or polyp or something, I send them to the doctor, to the Vanderbilt Voice Clinic here in Nashville. And because it would be irresponsible for me not to. But once we know what it is, and it's not cancer or something, you don't want to let something that's mysterious keep going, without you figuring out what it is. But then once you figure out what it is, the doctors can go, well, okay, you're not going to kill yourself to do a couple of vocal exercises, and they clear them, and then I can work with them. And most of the time, the body, like any alternative medical practitioner will tell you, or chiropractor, if you give it, good information and good technique with the way you're working your body or anything in your body, a lot of times it can heal itself. And that's what happens.
Yeah. And you said you have your pulling technique, and then there are cases where it might be fear-induced. Just in general, it could be something where your own mind is causing for this issue. If you had to put a number on it, what percentage would you say is something where the pulling technique could fix it? And then the other percentage is, let's just put you in an environment where you don't have as much mental pressure.
Well, I don't think you can separate those two. The reason I say that is the number one enemy for the voice is air.
Air.
I mean, it's
air itself.
Yeah, air, breath.
Wow.
Because it's like atomic power. Just the right amount can power the grid and power all your instruments and all your gear. But just a little bit too much, right? So we need to run a very efficient airstream through those little cords. So all they feel is vibration. They don't even, if you pull, what you're really doing is you are equalizing breath support and breath control. So it's like a compression engine centered in your saddle, like I say, and not in your diaphragm or your chest here or your rib cage, because that creates, your diaphragm is attached to the bottom of your rib cage all the way around. And if you are collapsed in your chest a little bit, you're moving forward or raising your chin, then the diaphragm has too much slack, too much ability to move, too much air. But if you widen the diaphragm, then you can go instead of, right? And how you do that is posture. And what is this other than confident body language, right?
Right.
So the mind and the technique and the body, they all go together. So I don't think you can separate pulling, which equalizes pressure, from the mental the mental aspect. Because if your voice is feeling too much air, you are going to be worried about it, and there's no way not to be, because you'll be feeling it. But if you get that pressure off and your voice feels nothing, then you can do this other thing that I teach, okay, which is, okay, in our crazy business, we aren't taught this. You just have to kind of know it. And I share it with my students. It's like a little ninja trick secret that unlocks everything. And that is getting back to, what is this for? What is this thing in our necks for? It's for delivering messages. And that's not an internal thing. That's an external thing. So if it's external, then okay, where is it going? Well, we forget, if you're delivering a message, you got to know who you're talking to, right? So I teach people, talk to the one heart that your lyric is to. And if it is to the room or the universe or that which is God or whatever you want to call that, then make it the one heart, that one heart of the room. I teach speakers as well. And it's like, if you, I've got a saying that I came up with because I love the ocean. If you sing to one fish, the ocean will hear you. But if you sing to a bunch of fishes, nobody's going to pay attention. because you're a flashlight beam instead of a laser beam. So if you know who you're talking to, then there's one more step that you take. And this, in my humble opinion, is the secret to what stage presence really is. Okay? It's getting to the, the raison d'etre, the reason you're making a sound. Well, if you're just delivering a message, you're narcissistically just throwing your truth out there, Right. That's really not valuable. What you want is a response from the heart the lyric is to, not the audience, unless it is the audience. And then you want to take them like a whole, this whole heart, and get the response you want from them. But, in your mind, you've got to be, you'd be willing to turn upside down, bounce on your head if you had to get the response you wanted from the audience. And different personalities do this differently. Some people do it, like not moving very much. You can be very still, but if you're really talking to somebody, the whole room will watch you do it because it's interesting. That's what makes it interesting, because you're being real. Okay? I'm so passionate about this because it's, every time I introduce this to whether either a beginner or a veteran artist, I've had veteran artists cry because they remembered why they're doing what they're doing and how much fun it is and what they're, why they love it. Because it's about, art is about delivering messages.
That's very interesting to hear that emotion plays such a part in what we deem as good sounding singing or good quality vocals. So that being said, out of all of these students that you've coached, all of the different artists, I know that you've also, it's not just limited to musicians, this extends to public speakers, people that need to use their voice, as you said, to deliver a message. Mm-hmm. What are some of the success stories, like some of your favorite from your students?
Well, one is the polyp that was inoperable, that the guy was, devastated. And I didn't know, if it could be healed. The doctor said it couldn't. And then to see that picture 2 years later with him continuing to train, that was so amazingly huge. Casey Musgraves came in. She was sent to me by another one of my students, Radney Foster, because she was having a little bit of strain. She just didn't know quite how to, and so she's already a great vocalist, but when she started pulling, and she was singing a show with Katy Perry, and was singing the high part, which was high for her. When she started pulling it, it was like cake piece for her. So she sent her whole band to me before the Golden Hours tour, and I worked with them a little bit. So that was fun to see that happen. But also, it's precious when I've got a student who really came in tone deaf, and he had no way or desire to be a professional singer, but he needed his personality. He needed to sing because he had a hole in his heart if he wasn't singing, and he was horrible. And so I think his family might have bugged him to get a vocal coach. So he started coming to me, and I didn't know if his ear could learn, because he's older, and I didn't know if it was possible. Well, I produced an album on him with covers, and he's having a blast because he can sing in tune, well, relatively, in tune. He can play his guitar, and his family loves it. He's got parties and things. The voice is so important for so many reasons, and sometimes the voice just needs to be unlocked for the person's psychological health, mental health, and joy. Yeah. In life. So I like working with students who need to sing and need to sing better for whatever the reason is, because then we have a really, really compelling reason to do these vocal exercises,
Right. It's more than I just want to kind of tune up what I already have going on. It kind of puts real meaning behind what you do.
Right. Right.
Um, like I said, I can imagine how those would be the stories that you kind of just smile to yourself about at night.
Yeah.
Let's say somebody's watching right now and they want to become a vocal coach themselves. What are some steps that one could take to achieve that?
Well, I did not do it academically. I'm actually majored in piano and minored in voice, but the way I went about it was like with Carol Chase. I asked myself what works for me, and then I noticed I started, helping people with the only thing I knew that worked for me. And I started noticing what worked for different people, and they would come in with totally different issues, and I'd try something else, and then I'd try something else. I think if you want to be a vocal coach, number one, you've got to have an instinct for sound. Like, what are you hearing? And can you kind of do that in your own throat a little bit? That's more important than the rules and regulations, that you might learn. Like, I know a lot of great doctors who can't, laryngologists even, and speech pathologists who can't sing their way out of a bucket. So a vocal coach needs to be intuitive. And yes, we also do need to understand the medical side, the science side. So I would say dig into that. And I'd also say, this is advice that I followed myself that helped me. If you, look around online and try to find vocal coaches that people seem to really like, and maybe buy a course from them. That's what I did. I bought tons of courses from other people to see what they were saying. And even if I just got one tiny thing from a whole course, it was worth it. I would put that in my, my toolkit,
Right.
and then give credit when, I teach somebody that. So I think I like the idea of vocal coaching practically and scientifically. Go back and find out why this imagery or why this thing you think works, so that you are coming from a set of facts. But it's what really matters is, does it work? Number one, to get the student able to do what they want to do, not what you want them to do, but what they want to do. And number two, does it work to make the student's voice feel better? And if it doesn't, I know there are some training, there's some vocal exercises that actually stress the voice. It's like a
Really?
vocal warm-up becomes a vocal tighten-up. So the other thing to know is the form of the vocal exercises are way more important than the actual exercise. So if you're going to be a coach, you want to not just learn a bunch of vocal exercises. You want to learn how to do them in the most practical way that opens up the voice and protects the voice.
Okay, wow. So it sounds like you can have first it starts off with the natural ability to hear good sound, to have a good ear, let's say. And maybe being a singer yourself would be very helpful, because then you can put to practice some of the things that you teach, some of the techniques you can work on with yourself. And then lastly, learning the science bit where, okay, why does this work? The why behind the
Right.
how. And if all of those are together, from what I understand, you're saying it can still all come crashing down if you're not able to coach that person if you're not able to replicate what you know. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's where you have to kind of read them and find out, what did they need you to tell them? Not what you want to tell them, but what do they need you to tell them, and in what words do they need to hear it? Some of my students need a very playful kind of, lesson where we play around, but we work our tails off.
Right.
Others are more, they don't like that. They want to be more serious. you got to kind of be a chameleon with personality types. And that way you're teaching them in their language. Because the truth is, teaching anything is really a team effort. It's me figuring out what they need and how they need to hear it, and them figuring out how to ask me what they need, for what they need, and how to tell me they don't understand that or whatever.
Right.
And anything that's puzzling, also another tip, if you want to be a vocal coach, if there's anything that puzzles you about one of your students, like network with other vocal coaches. That's what I do. I've got some vocal coaches I can tap. If I've got I'll run something past them and ask them what they think might be going on. So, in fact, the one I usually do that with is a classical coach. And then I teach him contemporary voice and he teaches me classical. So, we started now. It's really good idea for vocal coaches to network with each other and learn from each other.
Kind of mastermind together. And that makes sense because and the different research that I've done personally as far as business goes, it's been mind-blowing how much of it seems to intertwine. Down to, let's say you're a business coach, you would go and mastermind with, let's say, other business coaches, see what they're trying to, not necessarily, like you said, to steal trade secrets, but hey, what's been working for you? Because humans as a collective can get better if we work together. Even down to actually when you said using the emotion and having that spotlight effect where you're talking narrowly to one particular person, that one fish hears it, the whole ocean will end up getting that same message. So it's, again, kind of just drawing the parallel between that and the business side of any industry is crazy. It's picking a niche, picking who you're speaking to.
Yeah. I'm a business. I'm an entrepreneur. I mean, I started the vocal coaching thing, and I also do I do studio production, and I'm writing for a musical, and I'm still got my hands in everything.
Right.
But it's the same thing. I keep having to ask myself, why am I doing this? And then the different things that you do and different experiences you have as a creator, they can go in and create this business where your life works, not just your business, but your life. And like I was telling a friend, in fact, a student of mine today, sometimes I feel like a brat. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, but I don't even want to go to bed or brush my teeth because I'll miss something. I've had so much joy, and there've been pitfalls, and there've been scary times, and there've been heartbreaking times, because this music business will do that to you. But managing to survive that and morph and realize that all the brick walls are turning points. They're just turning points. And then just like find where you're valuable to somebody. And like, I forget who said this first, but it's where your passion meets the world's needs that works. You can find out how to reach these people with what you love to do. There you go.
And you said it's, again, very interesting to hear your perspective about the music business. After everything that you just said, honestly, I wasn't expecting for you to say that the music business gets hard. Of course it gets hard, but the way you spoke about it, it kind of reminded me, it hit close to home based on what I hear from artists, from managers, producers, whoever they are. What are some of the hard times that you've personally faced as a vocal coach?
Well, not as a vocal coach. This is probably the easiest time I've ever had. It's just unlimited. But I've failed at everything that I tried as I succeeded in it. I was a session singer, and then I had an endotracheal tube damage, stopped my career right there from childbirth. I had to stay in the hospital like 3 months and finally find myself and my voice myself again. Had no idea how that was going to come into play in this part of my life. that I would know how to recover a damaged voice. But then, I moved to Nashville from Memphis and started singing for like the biggest sessions in town, and then became an artist. And I had a #1 record and, Tonight Show, Queen of the World and all that kind of stuff. Then the label disappeared. The label folded overnight, and I was a little bit older. And so that was it for my artist career. After, it's like chopped liver all of a sudden. So then, okay, what can I do? All right, I kept writing songs, had a #1 song, and Leanne Rimes cut it. And, after people stopped cutting my songs, so I lost my songwriting deal. Oh my God, what do I do now? Okay, Carol Chase asked me how to hit a note. Maybe I can be a vocal coach. But here's the funny thing. All of the stuff that I've ever done, I'm still doing. And it's like come full circle. It's knitted itself back together. And I'm still writing songs. I think one of the biggest things I'll ever get to do might be this musical that I'm working on about sex trafficking. And we've had a reading in New York where we've had 2 standing ovations for the reading, which is unheard of. So, I'm saying all this to say, fail and fail often and trust the process. But, use wisdom and use the wisdom of community. You've got, if once you isolate yourself, you're really in trouble as an artist or as a creative. So it's in together. None of us can do this alone, but there's never a dead end. There's just never a dead end. Don't believe in it. It's an illusion. Just look for where the pivot point is.
I love that. And I've loved the quote, fail and fail often for a very long time, because it kind of reframes your mind about it. And I like what you said as far as finding a way out and thinking that there isn't an option for you is just a fallacy that we make up.
It really is.
Speaking of fallacies, then, can anyone sing?
Well, all I can say is that so far, I've never met anybody that couldn't who really wanted to, And then my husband's a drummer and he does not want to sing, so he can't sing. Now, he can tell when I'm out of tune, but he can't sing. But if you want to and you need to, in my experience, you can.
It'll happen. I guess it kind of goes full circle back to how much the mind does play a part in all of this.
Yeah. And yeah. Even if you're making a joyful noise, this is about delivering messages. And if you just remember that, here's a last way I can explain this. Okay. I am a vocal coach and I know vocal technique and I try to help people sing very well and very healthy and all that kind of stuff. But that's not the most important thing. I bet you can name in your, maybe silently, and everybody listening to this, you can name somebody who's got an amazing voice, an amazing range, and you really can appreciate the technique and maybe wonder who their vocal coach is. But you don't really want to play the album more than once, or maybe half of that. And you also know someone else that probably could use a vocal coach. Maybe their range is not that big. Maybe they're a little bit pitchy live. Maybe they're running into vocal trouble and stuff like that. But you would put it on shuffle. You would put the album on repeat and you've memorized all the lyrics. And the reason is that second person knows that secret, that the voice is about delivering messages that get responses. And the other one is making really nice sounds and might win a big contest, but they're not moving your heart. Does that make sense?
It does. So the voice is meant to deliver messages that garner a response. That's it seems so, of course. Of course that's what I want to do. That's the whole reason why I'm doing this. It's one of those
exactly.
Where your keys are right in plain sight, but you still go around the house looking for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So because you hear of artists, I'm going to use Ed Sheeran just because he's kind of spoken out about that where I think he said I was rubbish, complete trash when I first started, and obviously he is who he is today. Is that goes back to what you're saying, where if you truly want this, you'll make this happen.
Hmm. And if you need help, reach out. There's all kinds of sources and degrees of help. And so just, what I did when my voice was damaged, I couldn't afford any coaching because we had lost the income from my jingle singing in Memphis. And so I just remembered some classical art songs from my 1 year of classical voice in college. And it got me up in my head voice. And I just instinctively knew to kind of get up there a little bit and let that kind of relax my voice. And I just did that for a while and lightly sang and felt for it. So you can do a lot on your own, but the signs that you're doing it wrong are if it makes your voice worse or it fatigues and strains your voice, then you got to find some other advice.
What are some signs of your voice being strained? Let's say you just think it's a sore throat.
Yeah, well, there's a difference between the sore throat of a cold and the sore larynx. That's where it hurts to make a vocal sound. It doesn't feel too good to speak even. Or where your voice doesn't work as well the next day after you've used it the day before. If you pull your voice and equalize this pressure, you can sing as long as you want to. I mean, you can't go from 0 to 90, but kind of get your stamina going. But you should never experience vocal strain. That's really what I believe. If you have good technique and you're taking care of yourself physically. So that's the sign, yeah.
Let's say somebody is trying your pulling technique, or they haven't necessarily heard of it yet, and their voice is already sore from the day before. Right now they're listening and they're wondering, okay, I know my voice is strained. How do I fix it? How do I get back tomorrow?
That's a really, really good question. One thing I've found that's pretty instant is to put your hand right in front of your face like that and talk or sing into your hand. Imagine it's a glass window pane and don't leave a breath mark on it. You do want to take a good breath. You take a good breath and then you don't use it. You take a good breath and then you sing or talk. And I could do this, for the longest time. I could hold a note, yeah, on one note. I could on one breath, and my breath would last for, forever almost. Because I'm using so much less of it, I'm kind of on purpose not breathing on my hand, so it makes me pull back and deliver a small breath to my hand. But the thing is, when you put your hand like that, you do kind of pull back a little bit, and that opens up your head, your resonance. That opens up your throat channel, your throat tract, and that creates sound, that creates volume. So it turns out that when you start using less air to make sound, you make more sound, very much like weak coffee as opposed to strong coffee. You use less water, right?
Yeah.
And it's the breath that's usually the vocal strain causer, the vocal fatigue causer. So get that breath, efficient and make it compression breath. Squeeze your butt and pull your head back. And it's kind of cocky, like that, which is what an animal does when they're trying to open their ears. It's the same kind of move. Like, did you say treat, or trip to the vet? So that's what you can do if you're starting to feel your voice not feeling too good. Speaking and singing, try using as little breath, but keep your face really articulating. Don't make your face get small. Keep your eyes working and your jaw working and, stay very flexible and all this, but just don't breathe out sound. Instead, creates sound, not air.
Well, I mean, I have to do it now. So
Hey, yeah.
I just want to talk now. See, I'm feeling the breath,
Yeah.
so I can
Well, you're gonna
see
feel a
how
little
trying
bit.
to pull back
Yeah.
just a little bit. Okay, that's very interesting.
If you count to 3, 1, 2, 3. And then each time you say it and over pronounce it, and every time you say it, try to feel just a little bit less, because you will feel air there, but just try to feel a little bit less. Sometimes I use a candle flame, like really close.
Wow, that's something. I'll be honest, I'll probably be talking to my hand for the rest of the night now.
Yeah, you as a podcaster can get weary too. Yeah.
Exactly, because I knew I was going to get to this topic. How do you find your voice? Just full transparency, there was a little bit of a learning curve. I've been doing music since I was 14 years old. So
Yeah.
about half of my life now, I've been doing music. That's one thing. It did take time to find my voice and all of that. I'm not dismissing that, but man, it was super daunting when I first got on this type of microphone and I'm just talking.
Yeah.
How do you do that with singing? How do you find your voice? Because I'm assuming your speaking voice is going to be different than your singing voice, or are they supposed to be more the same?
If you think about them as being the same, it's better. It's speaking on a melody and holding it out a little bit longer. But it's the same technique. It really is. If if I go, what's love got to do? Got to do it. I'm pulling just like I am when I'm speaking right now. I'm just doing it stronger. I'm pulling it stronger. Right? And the other thing about finding your voice is you don't know what your voice sounds like because your ears are here and your voice is coming out here until you hear it recorded. That's why everybody's voice sounds so weird when they first hear it back, right? So you can put your hands like that, or you can get these little earphones things that I've got. But the main thing is to record yourself and start getting familiar with your voice. And as far as finding your unique voice, right? As far as finding your unique voice, that is a combination of things, of finding your full potential physical voice, your full resonance, your full ability, but also your story. What's your value system? What are your experiences in life? What do you care about, right? And then also, what is your voice like the best? What kind of genre does your voice feel the best doing? What lyrics do you feel the best delivering?
The genre of music actually plays a part as far as like how well you can sing.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, because if you're singing in a genre that is not right for you, it's like speaking a foreign language that you haven't quite learned very well. Mm. Now you can learn style if it's your heart. What does your heart love? What does your voice love? And what is working in the commercial fan base? So those three things, if you get your heart liking something your voice likes to sing, and that has an audience, even if you haven't found them yet, then that's your unique voice.
I love that, because you didn't just say the first 2 points, yes, were amazing, but the fact that you tied it into what is commercially viable right now, what are people actually consuming? Because if it is a hobby, then by all means, sing to your heart's content. But yeah, if you're trying to pursue it, it would behoove you not to do that. So, kind of a personal question on this one, just since we're already on this topic. Why would it's not hypothetical, the someone is me, but why would someone be able to, I can do a higher, like a ooh or an I, like I can do those kind of, very, very slight auto tune, would never know it was on just because I'm like, all right, fix it a little bit. But enough where I could include it in a song.
Mhm.
But anything else, you might think I'm that tone deaf student of yours that you were speaking about earlier.
Well, if there's an issue with pitch, it's either one of two things, or it could be both. And one is you don't know how to control. You know what you want to hit, but you can't control your voice to be able to hit it, and that's just learning technique. The other thing that the ear that could be a problem is the ear actually hasn't learned how to hear that yet. But I'm telling you from experience, not just with the one, but with several people, your ear can learn. It can grow new neural synapses to actually process pitch, aim at pitch, and so that the brain can tell the vocal cords what to do to be able to create that pitch. Does that make sense?
It does. It's the only way that you're able to teach your ears through repetition.
Right, and
Okay.
and repetition, and also you've got to know if you're hitting it or not.
Right.
Now, my student that learned, he had to do a lot of stuff by himself because otherwise I'd just have to train him 24 hours a day. I mean, he was really that tone deaf, but he was determined, and dang, he did. But he used to snark, a guitar, tuner, to check and see if he was hitting a C sharp when he thought he was.
Wow.
When I told him that's what he had to hit. So, get a coach, get a friend, get someone who, or, if you can hear if you're hitting it, then hit the piano note and try to match it. There's a 3-step process to this, by the way, that works. It's the 3-step miming process that I teach. One, actually just really listen to whatever it is you want to sing or you want to hit. Really listen to it, or like a line or a style or a phrase or a vocal lick, whatever it is. Listen to it without making a sound. And best to listen to it with some kind of earbuds so you can really hear it. Second step, mime it silently. While you're really listening to what it is, in your imagination, tell your voice to do that. And things are going to line up without you even making a sound. Third step, then, is to sing with it and check yourself. Did you match it? But if you'll break it down and go slow like that, that's the way you can train your ear. And that's the way you can train your voice, too, to do different kinds of styles and licks and things.
I'm going to speak as the person that not necessarily is pessimistic, but might have something snarky to say about everything. They might skip step number 2, where
They
you
shouldn't.
kind of mime it. What's so important about that step?
It's the same reason that I can teach and diagnose issues the way I can. Did you know that when you listen to someone sing, your larynx moves?
Alongside with it, even if you're not speaking, or
That's right. Even if you're not a singer and you're hearing someone sing, that's the way humans learn language, is by hearing and miming. Or like in your imagination, you're listening and you're imagining, you're teaching yourself to do that. If you skip that second step, you're not processing. Your brain isn't learning. Your ear isn't learning. You're just pinning the tail on the donkey with the third step. Well, let me throw that at that pitch and see if that works. And then, man, that's just such a slow way to learn. Yeah, break it down and silently just mime it. Yeah.
Well, would you recommend somebody that is trying to do this to record it each time?
You can record it and then listen back,
Okay.
but you can't record yourself miming.
And
You've got to be
not.
careful, and you got to be careful and not make a sound at all, so that the vocal cords are not working. Except, your larynx is moving, and the muscles might be pulling on the cords to make certain pitches, but there's no air running through the instrument making a vibration of any kind. That's important for that second step.
That's really, so a lot of this, it really is control. Kind of bringing it back to sports again. I remember
Yes.
being in high school when we would do training for whether it was like football or wrestling. We wouldn't just do push-ups. Then the coach would say halfway through, hold it. You don't just do
Yeah.
pull-ups halfway through, hold it. Now start moving it around. Start seeing if you can will your body to do whatever you want. And it sounds like that is very similar to what you teach.
Yeah. Yep.
That's really cool. I knew I would love this conversation.
The voice is fascinating. It really, really is. Yeah. Both physically and psychologically. Yeah.
What about when you're performing live? Let's say you're a singer and you want to have dancing and a lot of movement in your set to have that stage presence you were talking about. Typically, from what I've noticed, it affects my vocal quality when I do too much moving. So I try to stay in a similar stance. So how do you kind of navigate through that?
And I've worked through that. I've worked with people that have to do that. One way, of course, is to let Fred sing for that part. Just let the machine sing for a second. But the other, if you want to, actually sing, you got to know. I mean, it's like Tina Turner. Sometimes she wouldn't move. Her dancers would move, but she would be kind of still for something, right? And then she'd go back to dancing. Right. So it's artfully choreographing can help. With a choreographer that understands that when you go down like that, you will lose vocal control because your diaphragm will go, because your rib cage fell. So when you move, like the samba, move with if you can, with your rib cage staying flexibly open. And, you can take your mic stand and hold it and pull it like that, and it looks like, but you're really opening your chest. You can even move over the stage and do that. But you're really opening your chest. What you don't want to do is crunch over. And this is true in the studio too. So you want your upper spine to be straight. You want your head balanced over your heel. And when you've got something strenuous to do, you want to kind of let the just kind of not move so much. And then you can get back to moving, and like when the instrumental's happening or the turnaround or all that, but you are human. And, I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard that Beyonce does sings her show while running on a treadmill. So there's some training that you can do,
Wow. Shout out to Queen
Not
Bee
me.
for going the extra mile, literally.
Oh, God. Yeah.
That is insane. Talk about intense. Well, let's say somebody is watching this right now and they want to connect with you and they'd like to hire you as a coach. What would be the best way for them to do that?
Well, they can just go to judyrodman.com, and everything that I've got for them is there, including a lot of free stuff. And I just published today on my podcast a new exercise for joining chest and head voice. So if you go to allthingsvocal.com or you go to my website, judyrodman.com, you'll see the blog and podcast embedded there. You can get a free vocal exercise routine in exactly what we've been talking about.
That is, and because there's no excuses. You know how long where I was like, man, I really would love to have a vocal coach, and it was whether it's the budget or you just stop thinking about it when it's a different season, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
It's that simple. It's to, like you said, to look it up. Let's say again we have somebody watching this right now. They want to sing. They have that desire, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
They want to not only just sing, they want to create their own music. They're a songwriter and they want to put it out to the world, but they're scared. They are terrified of putting themselves out there because what if they get judged? They don't think their singing is good enough. They don't think they're at that level. What would you tell that person that's feeling this way?
The first thing I would tell them is real singing is not for the squeamish. You really do have to be brave. But the way you can be brave is to realize that this thing, art, whether it's sculpting or making music or singing, it's about delivering messages. That's what makes it valuable, not you doing it perfectly. In fact, that can be less valuable because it doesn't sound as human.
Right.
But what you're doing when you're creating even if it's just for yourself at first, where you're making your own self feel better. We talk to ourselves, and we talk ourselves into and out of stuff. And we also throw stuff against the wall so we can hear it back. And that's valuable. Well, if you think of doing this not as introspectively navel-gazing, but of thinking up something that's a message, that's songwriting, thinking it up, kind of messing around with it, changing it and all that kind of stuff. And then, but you've got a purpose for it. And that's to tell somebody something and get a response back. And when you do that, you realize you're not just doing this for you. People that are kind and meek and giving, sometimes they think, well, why should I call attention to myself with doing this stuff? And a lot of creative people are that way. And what you got to rethink is the same thing that I learned about selling what I do from Seth Godin, who's my favorite marketer. And that is, if you're creating something that can make the world a better place, can make somebody smile even, make somebody feel better, make somebody feel not so alone because they understand that somebody understands that too, right? Then selling that thing or making that thing visible or letting somebody hear that song or that voice is a holy art.
Yes. Thank you. Mm-hmm. It really is. It's something that I feel like you ought to do. I think I said that on a previous episode, where it's just a shame if you don't.
Exactly. The world is missing what you can give. Yep. Even if it doesn't matter how many people in the world. I can't name how many how many songwriters and artists that I know that just really started out with a very small crowd and never really intended to be huge. And they just did their thing. And instead of one person, it blew up. It doesn't matter how many people. It matters that you move the one.